Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shruti Mishra and here are the headlines we are tracking this evening. RBI Monetary Policy Committee keeps the repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for the 11th consecutive time, but cuts the cash reserve ratio for banks by 50 basis points, unleashing over 1 lakh crore of liquidity into the system.
The horse has made a very valiant effort to bolt. Our effort is to keep it in tight leash.
RBI raises its inflation forecast for this fiscal to 4.8%. Governor reiterates the need to keep prices on a tight leash. Central Bank also lowers its GDP forecast by 60 basis points to 6.6%, even as Governor says growth slowdown likely to have bottomed out in Q2. Q2 GDP growth at 5.4% does not indicate a systemic slowdown, says Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, cites lack of government spending and capital expenditure and expects Q3 to make up for it. Sensex and Nifty end in the red after RBI policy. Bank stocks tumble, but mid-caps buck the trend. Rupee gains against the dollar even as it remains closer to record low levels. Opposition MPs continue to protest over the Adani issue in Parliament. Controversy in Rajya Sabha after Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar says a wad of currency notes were recovered from a seat allotted to Congress MP Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who denies the charges. Haryana police fire tear gas at farmers attempting to march towards Delhi. Erect layers of barricading with a wall, iron nails and barbed wires to block the protesting farmers who are demanding a legal guarantee of minimum support price. The war in Syria escalates as rebel forces capture more cities. Thousands flee their houses as opposition forces inch closer to the central Syrian city of Homs after capturing Hama. Israel says that it struck what it claims as Hezbollah smuggling routes on the Syria-Lebanon border. The leader of South Korea's ruling party calls for President Yoon's suspension, cites credible evidence suggesting that the president had sought the arrest of politicians after his short-lived declaration of martial law. A defiant Emmanuel Macron rules out resigning and vows to complete his term as French president till 2027, promises to appoint a new prime minister within days as France plunges into political turmoil after a no-confidence vote toppled the government. The union government is not satisfied with Ola Electric's claim of resolving 99% of its customer grievances. Sources say 250 random calls made to Ola's customer left the Consumer Affairs Ministry dissatisfied. Airlines paid compensation worth 50 crore to passengers for flight delays and cancellations in the first 10 months of 2024. This is a 47% rise compared to last year. Air India accounts for more than 50%. SpiceJet, with 2% market share, accounts for 20% of the compensation paid. The big story this evening, the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee has kept the benchmark repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for the 11th consecutive time. Now, this was Governor Shaktikanta Das's last policy meet before his tenure comes to an end. There has been no word on whether he would get an extension or if the centre would appoint his successor. Addressing a press conference, RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das said that the central bank deferred a rate cut, keeping a prudent eye on the growth inflation dynamic and global developments. Das said that there was a need to keep inflation on a tight leash. The RBI also decided to cut the cash reserve ratio by 50 basis points. This would unleash over 1 lakh crore of liquidity into the system. The committee also decided to hike its FY25 inflation target from 4.5% to 4.8% for the next 3 quarters. The RBI said that it expects food inflation to linger on in the third quarter as well. Similarly, GDP growth estimates for FY25 has also been slashed from 7.2% to 6.6%. However, Governor Das said that high-frequency indicators suggest that slowdown in the second quarter has bottomed out.
Prudence, practicality and timing will continue to be the guiding principles for the Reserve Bank's future actions. It is all about dissection of the inflation growth conditions and acting accordingly. Timing of actions is the key.
At present, it is necessary to draw on the flexibility provided
by the neutral stance of monetary policy to wait for and monitor the incoming data for confirmation of the decline in inflation.
Well, Lata Venkatesh is here with more on the monetary policy and its impact on the market and the economy.
Well, first up, I think one of the most practical policies to be able to exactly train its eyes on the problem of liquidity not yet ready for a rate cut. So on liquidity itself, there is a little bit of surplus liquidity in the system, but it's whittled down from about, over 4 lakh crore end of September. It's come down all the way to barely 40,000 crore. On some days, it goes on into a deficit and banks are borrowing from the Reserve Bank. And that's very obvious because cash withdrawal is more during Diwali and the normal Q3 period. It's more during elections. As well, the Reserve Bank has been selling a lot of dollars, 60 billion or thereabouts. And that also has pulled out a lot of cash. At least 4 lakh crore has been pulled out. About 4.2 lakh crore was the surplus as of end September. It had come down to 40,000 crores end November. Of that, the CRR cut replenishes 1.16 lakh crore. There is a money multiplier, and in course of time, it will become 4 lakh crore over 6-7 months. But the governor, we asked him, and the governor agreed that there will be a liquidity deficit continuing. The cash outflow, the tax outflows are temporary because the government spends it and it comes back. But cash withdrawal by you and me, as well as when the Reserve Bank may continue to sell dollars, given that the Trump presidency is yet to begin, we could well see, attacks on the currency or withdrawal of foreign exchange by FPIs. There will be a deficit. Will he do more? Over there, he did not give away the big weapon that the market was looking for, which is open market sales of open market purchases of bonds. People were expecting that if he did that, then he could put more money. But he did not say that all those are on the table. That would have been his usual statement. He just did not allow himself to be drawn in. So I think OMO purchases at the moment is not on the table. When it comes to the repo cut, obviously the question now is, we didn't expect this time. Will it happen next time? I just want to point out to a couple of statements of his. He said, prudence, practicality and timing of decisions become critical. RBI endeavors, again, quoting him, to implement timely and carefully calibrated measures to derive maximum impact. I mean, the way in which it was contextualized, he very nicely defended why you can't do a cut now, because it is a bit timely and practical. If you do it now, there is no liquidity in the system. It won't get passed on because everybody is dying for deposits. How will they pass on a lending cut? So I think it was very beautifully timed, phrased and explained. And then he went on to another statement. It is necessary, given the flexibility of the neutral stance, to wait for and monitor the incoming data for confirmation of the decline in inflation. Now, everybody's guess is when you meet in February, you will see a fall in inflation. So again, there seems to me at least a hint there that when there is a confirmation of the decline in inflation, they can move. They will not wait for actual 4%. That's my guess. And to be fair, let me come to the forecast itself. In the first place, all the 4 forecasts of inflation, that is for Q3, Q4, Q1 and Q2 as well next year, has for growth has been lowered and for inflation has been upped. But the Q2 FY26 next year, that is almost a year from now, the forecast is 4%. So if I put both those together, the governor saying that, we will look at the incoming data for confirmation of fall in inflation and their forecast of 4% inflation in Q2 FY26, it very much looks like a repo cut is possible in the February policy. Once again, I would think that the Reserve Bank had lost a bit of its credibility by completely being out of line in its Q2 forecast. It's restored practically all of it by boldly bringing down the growth forecast by between 40 and 60 basis points for the various quarters.
Thanks for that, Lata. Policy aside, the Reserve Bank of India also announced a slew of decisions aimed at making it easier to access agriculture loans up to a certain limit, among others. Ritu Singh is here with us. Ritu, take us through the key measures.
Well, lots of non-policy measures, but let's start with the mule accounts, where RBI has repeatedly raised concerns about the fact that banks need to deal with these unclaimed deposit accounts. And the governor said RBI is now actively working to prevent and mitigate digital frauds by strengthening cybersecurity, transaction monitoring, and fraud prevention for banks. And so it is building something called the MuleHunter.ai, which is being built by the RBI Innovation Hub, which is an AI ML-based detection model to combat this. We're yet to see how that plays out. Number two, UPI scope has also been widened. So now RBI plans to allow small finance banks to also offer pre-sanctioned credit lines through UPI, something that so far only banks were allowed to do. And this will boost access to credit for the new-to-credit customers. Number three, to account for inflation and rising agricultural input cost, the limit for collateral-free agriculture loans has also been increased from about 1.6 lakh per borrower to 2 lakh rupees per borrower. And this is going to, again, improve access to for formal credit for the small farmers and the marginal farmers. Apart from this, to attract more foreign capital inflows as well, RBI has increased the interest rate ceiling on FCNRB, which is the foreign currency non-resident bank deposits, to overnight alternate reference rate, or what we call ARR, plus 400 basis points from the earlier ARR plus 200 basis points. And this is for the 1 to 3 year maturity bucket. And for the 3 to 5 year maturity bucket, it has been raised to ARR plus 500 basis points. But keep in mind, this relaxation is effective immediately and valid only until March next year. Experts believe it may not really move the needle much. Now, that's as far as the non-policy measures are concerned. But here are the governor, who was asked about his tenure, the big question mark that still remains, that is set to expire in 4 days on the 10th of December. Here's how he responded.
Have you heard anything from the government so far, whether you are continuing this term, at least informally, before the policy meeting started? I will have one more question today. Yes.
Is that your only question?
No, I will have one more.
No. Let's stick to monetary policy. Please ask your question on monetary policy. Otherwise, you will miss your chance on asking a question on the monetary policy. So you choose which one you want to ask.
Okay,
it's your choice.
Okay.
I'm willing to answer the first question also, but it's your choice.
Okay, please answer the first question then.
Okay, I'm not giving you any headline, and I think it's better we stick to monetary policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has responded to second quarter GDP growth slowing to its lowest level in 21 months. Finance Minister said the numbers do not indicate a systemic slowdown and cited lack of government spending and capital expenditure as the key reasons. Sitharaman expects growth in quarter three to make up for quarter two.
Quarter one, the election, but quarter four, which was very good, had an impact on quarter one. So the numbers were not alarming when you saw it. But quarter two, when it slows down and when growth numbers are reflecting, we should put it in the context of an economy, a governance structure, which was all focused on election. And therefore, quarter one's emphasis more on running the election through had a bearing on quarter two. But I'm elaborating this just to say it's not a systemic slowdown. It is more absence of activity on public expenditure, capital expenditure, and so on. So I expect quarter three to also make up for all this.
All right. The Indian rupee gained about 4 paisa against the dollar after the RBI monetary policy. The rupee remains near record low levels against the greenback. 10-year bond prices also declined today after RBI's move to boost liquidity by cutting the cash reserve ratio from money market to the stock market. Sensex and Nifty ended in the red after a choppy session. Bank stocks also gave up early gains. Mid-caps managed to buck the trend. Moving on, the union government is not satisfied with Ola Electric's claim of resolving 99% of its customer grievances. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that 250 random calls made to Ola's customer left the Consumer Affairs Ministry dissatisfied. Abhimanyu joins us now. Abhimanyu, what are you picking up from your sources?
Following Ola Electric's claim of over 99% of customer grievances having been resolved successfully, the Department of Consumer Affairs had reached out to several of these customers to verify and corroborate these claims which were made by the EV OEM. Around 250 customers have expressed dissatisfaction, even as the department is still in process of reaching out to more customers. Until now, the findings and revelations are contrary to the submissions given by Ola Electric. It remains to be seen till when the final report would be submitted by the Director General of the Bureau of Indian Standards, who was asked last month by the Central Consumer Protection Authority to initiate a probe into consumer complaints against Ola Electric, many of which were not resolved according to the initial complaint. It remains to be seen how the situation is going to pan out, even as the government is also in process of initiating another set of inquiry against another EV OEM, though it has not been indicated which is the EV OEM, but the government is possibly going to expand the ambit of the probe as indicated earlier, and the DGBIS in all likelihood is going to submit its report by the end of this month into the consumer complaints which were filed against Ola Electric.
Well, with that, it's time for us to head into a short break. But coming up, Haryana police fire tear gas at farmers attempting to march towards Delhi. A ground report when we return. Welcome back to Business 360. Airlines paid compensation worth 50 crores to passengers for flight delays and cancellations in the first 10 months of 2024. This is a 47% rise compared to last year. So which airline paid how much? Madiha Mujawar is here with the details. Madiha.
Right. So if you compare the amount to 2022, 50 crores is 47% more than last year and almost triple of the amount paid by airlines in 2022, which is 17.7 crore rupees. Now, of these 50 crores, airlines paid 12.7 crores towards denying boarding to passengers. Almost 10 crore was paid towards cancelling flights. A major chunk was towards delays beyond 2 hours. I'm sure most people who travel by air have suffered due to long delays, long flight delays by airlines. So that amount stood at nearly 27 crore rupees. Now, of the 50 crores paid between Jan to October 2024, more than half was paid by just Air India, and it also matches the kind of delays and cancellations we saw at Air India since the start of the year. Now, Indigo, which is the largest domestic carrier, has shelled out the lowest amount in compensation, just 37 lakh rupees. That's also because the airline could provide alternate flights and also refunds to passengers, given the kind of fleet it has to provide alternate flights. Now, what's interesting is that SpiceJet, which has a very small fleet as compared to other big players and hence also a lower market share of 2.4%, spent over 10 crore rupees of the 50 crore rupees towards compensation to passengers between Jan to October. When it came to denying boarding, Air India and Vistara shelled out more. Air India paid 10 crore rupees for denying boarding as compared to Indigo that spent just 37 lakh. For flight cancellations, Air India paid 5 crore rupees, followed by SpiceJet that paid 2.7 crore rupees in compensation to passengers. For delays beyond 2 hours, Air India topped the list with the airline spending 10 crores towards compensation. This is also where SpiceJet had to spend more. The airline paid 7.4 crore rupees for delaying flights beyond 2 hours. Now, if we look at the punctuality chart of airlines in October, all of them have performed below 80%. Indigo had an on-time performance of 71.9%, Vistara at 71.4%, Akasa Air stood at 67.2%, Air India had an OTP of 66.3%, and SpiceJet stood at 63.8%. So that's what the years so far look like for Indian Airlines in terms of compensation they had to pay to passengers for the inconvenience.
Well, Thank you, Madiha, for those details. Moving on, 4 people were injured in clashes with Haryana police, which set up barricades to block the farmers' march to Delhi. The protesting farmers are demanding a legal guarantee on minimum support price. My colleague Manoj Rathi gets us the latest from Haryana's Shambhu border.
शंभू बॉर्डर हम मौजूद हैं जहां पर आज किसानों की तरफ से ऐलान किया गया था कि एक दिल्ली कूच किया जाएगा। 101 किसान हालांकि हम शंभू बॉर्डर पर मौजूद हैं जहां पर पूरी पुलिस फोर्स तैनात की गई है। हरियाणा प्रशासन के साथ साथ एक्स्ट्रा पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेज लगाई गई हैं और यहां से आगे किसी को भी जाने की परमिशन नहीं दी गई और ये पहले ही कह दिया गया था कि किसी भी तरह से कोई आगे नहीं जाएगा। 144 धारा लगाई गई है, हरियाणा में एंटर नहीं हो सकता और जिसके चलते हालांकि किसानों करीब 1 बजे से लेकर अगर हम बात करें तो करीब 3 से 3.5 घंटे लगातार आपस में नोकझोंक हुई पुलिस के साथ, प्रशासन के साथ और अब जाकर जो किसान है वो पीछे हुए हैं, यानी कि आगे नहीं जाने दिया जाएगा, ये बहुत क्लियर था। और इसके साथ साथ अब जो किसान की अगली जो रणनीति है वो क्या रहने वाली है ये भी देखना होगा, क्योंकि कई चीज़ों को लेकर पुलिस प्रशासन ने पहले भी इनके साथ मीटिंग की थी और भी कई चीज़ों को लेकर इसमें बातचीत हुई है, लेकिन किसी भी तरह से कोई निष्कर्ष नहीं निकला। इसको लेकर अब क्या रणनीति बनती है वो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके जो लीडर्स हैं वो बताएंगे। इसमें अगर हम बात करें तो कहीं ना कहीं बहुत सारी चीज़ों को लेकर इसमें प्रशासन के साथ पहले बातचीत हुई, लेकिन किसी भी तरह से कोई सोल्यूशन नहीं निकला, जिसको लेकर अब पुलिस कहीं ना कहीं अब आगे क्या रणनीति रहने वाली है इसको लेकर भी जो जानकारी दी जाएगी। लेकिन फिलहाल जो किसान हैं वो पीछे हुए हैं और जो प्रशासन की कह सकते हैं कि पूरी पुख्ता इंतजाम जो है वो किए गए थे, जिसको लेकर अब पूरे कह सकते हैं कि माहौल जरूर बनाया गया था और किसान काफ़ी संख्या में पीछे भी इकट्ठा हुए हैं, लेकिन वो उनको आगे जाने के लिए जो है वो नहीं कहा गया था और पूरे प्रोटोकॉल के साथ कहा गया था। तो तस्वीरें लगातार देख रहे हैं और चंडीगढ़ से बात करें, चंडीगढ़ के साथ लगते बिल्कुल पंजाब और हरियाणा के बॉर्डर पे आज काफ़ी संख्या में किसान इकट्ठा हुए और किसानों ने जमकर जो उनके समर्थन में यहाँ पहुंचे थे उन्होंने भी जमकर प्रदर्शन किया और दूसरे जो 101 किसान थे वो जरूर पूरे बैरिकेडिंग तक पहुंच गए थे, लेकिन उसके आगे उन्हें नहीं जाने दिया गया।
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.